What's up, guys? It's The Sweat. I'm Emerson Latzia. We're in beautiful Chicago for the Fantasy Baseball World Championships. We're at Wrigley Field. Coming up, we got Sean Marshall, one-on-one, former Cubs pitcher.
Get on, baby.
We're talking to him about all sorts of things. Oh, in the show or no, we're going to play that with him. Catching up with a bunch of qualifiers for the Fantasy Baseball World Championships. And we're going to be touching the ivy. Don't touch the ivy?
No.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, you're watching The Sweat. Take it away, Brendan.
What a start to the show. Emerson Latzia, thank you so much. It looks like a blast out at Wrigley Field in Chicago. He gets to frolic in the Wrigley Ivy because the Cubs are in Pittsburgh at the Pirates, and that's one of 15 games in baseball this evening. We're going to break down this large slate with DK Live Steve Buchanan and Greg Ehrenberg using MLB Chase or fade. I read the statements. These guys agree or disagree with them. Each of the Padres' last 5 games have gone over the total runs line. Tonight, San Diego part of a 9-run total with the Phillies. They've got Chris Paddock on the mound, who gave up 5 earned, 2 homers last time he faced the Phils. So chase or fade, the Padres' overstreak continues. Mr. Steve Buchanan.
I don't love this game for the over here. Padres 4.9 run per game on the road, what they averaged. Phillies 5.1 at home. And the Phillies hit Paddock the last time he faced him. 6 runs allowed, 5 of them being earned. But Vince Velasquez struggles a lot more against lefties, and this is a very right-handed heavy lineup for the Padres, and that's evidenced by the lineup that they've put out here for tonight here. So I think it'll be close. Like I could see this being like a 4-3 game or something like that. But I don't love the over on this one. I think 9 runs just feels like a bit much for, someone as talented as Paddock and Vince Velasquez, who is much tougher on righties than he is on lefties. So I'm going to go with the under on this one.
Greg, chase or fade, Padres, they keep it going, part of these high-scoring games?
So I'm going to fade, and I'm going to agree with Steve here. The issue is just, like Steve said, the number's really high. The idea that these teams are going to combine for 10 runs, I think it's a little bit of recency bias here because the Padres have scored a bunch of runs recently. The Cubs have scored the Phillies have scored a bunch of runs recently since hiring Charlie Emanuel as their hitting coach. But we look at these 2 starting pitchers. Vince Velasquez has been solid against right-handed bats this year. As Steve said, Chris Paddock has been solid against right-handed bats. And the other thing to consider also is that neither of these offenses have been very good against right-handed pitchers. Both are near the bottom third of the league against righties, well below 100 WRC+. So I think this should be a lowish scoring game. The total's a little too high.
Speaking of teams that have scored a lot of runs lately, the Marlins, believe it or not, have, but they are still one of the worst offenses in baseball. They have a good chance to score some runs tonight since they are at Coors Field in Colorado. Chase or fade, the Marlins hit the over on their individual team total of 5.5 runs, Greg.
Yeah, that's a really high number for the Marlins. And they're also going up against John Gray, who, even though this is at Coors Field, Gray's been pretty solid at home this year. He's an ERA under 4 pitching in Colorado. The elevation may be a little bit of a concern. There's always a chance for a high score in Colorado, but still the 5.5 runs, that's so much closer to the ceiling of what the Marlins usually do than the floor. So we look at John Gray at 8,000 as a DFS play. There is a little bit of risk there, but for a GPP play, I really like it because he has been good at home, and we know the Marlins offense just simply isn't that good.
Bukes, does the starting pitcher here for Colorado scare you away too?
Yeah, totally. I mean, kind of like what Greg said. I mean, he's been excellent at home. He's got a 3.89 xFIP at Coors Field this season. Look, just because they're in Coors Field doesn't mean all of a sudden these hitters are going to start mashing the ball. I mean, this lineup sucks. Like, I don't know how else to say it. The Marlins average 3.4 runs per game on the road this season. You can imagine that's the lowest in the league. So of course it is. Look, can they have one of those games when they can score, a bunch of runs? Of course. I mean, we've seen it before. There's still major league players, I guess, but it's not like there's no way that you go on your phone. You're going to go, 5.5 runs. I think I want to take that for the Marlins tonight. Like, you're not doing that, and you probably shouldn't be doing that. If by chance it happens, well, I'm sorry, you didn't end up winning tonight, but there's so many other bets that you could make that you can feel good about. So I'm going to fade this one. Like, I'm never taking the Marlins to try to score 6 runs and put my hard-earned money on that.
Let's see if you have interest in White Sox Angels. Lucas Giolito of the Sox, he is plus 215 to log the win, while Halo's lefty Patrick Sandoval is plus 150 to do the same thing. Chase or fade, Giolito returns to his early season form tonight, and he gets the dub, Steve.
honestly, when you look at his more advanced numbers, it seems like he's been more unlucky than anything in the second half. His xFIP sits at 3.55, which is just slightly above what he had in the first half here. And he's not giving up a lot of hard contact either. He's only got a 34.8 hard hit rate in the second half. The thing that's enticing about the Angels is that they were one of the toughest teams in the league to strike out during the first half. They're actually they have one of the highest K percentages in the league now in the second half. It's at 25.1%. You look at their first half numbers, they were under 20%. So they're striking out a lot more here. And if that's happening right now, that only benefits Giolito in this spot here. So getting him at these odds feels like an excellent bet to make. You're getting some really, really good value here on a pitcher that, quite frankly, is very talented. Right? We've seen it all season long. So I absolutely love those odds there for Giolito.
Greg, Giolito returning to form, chase or fade?
Yeah, I'm going to agree with Steve again. I pretty much have to echo all the things he said. But one thing he didn't mention that I'm going to add is that for the season, Giolito's been much better on the road than he has been at home. Pitching in Chicago, he's an ERA right around 4, but he is a sub-3 ERA pitching on the road. That's usually inverse what we see from starting pitchers. And I still think that's kind of being built into the price, where I think that the bookmakers are just kind of looking at this and saying like, it's a road game for Giolito, therefore we assume he's going to be worse. But it just hasn't been the case this year. So we give really long odds on Giolito, who's been one of the best pitchers in baseball this year. It's a good bet.
All right, as we started the show, Emerson scared the Cubs out of Wrigley, and they're on the road taking on the Pirates, who are home underdogs. Chicago is going to send Kyle Hendricks to the mound tonight. Cubs are clearly the better team here. They just seem to refuse to win when Hendricks is starting. They've won just 2 games with him out there since June 9th. Chase or fade, the Pirates keep that trend going and upset the Cubbies, Greg?
So I don't put a whole lot of stock into whether Hendricks actually gets the win or not when he's the starting pitcher. But one thing I do think that matters is that he's been really bad on the road. And then we look at Joe Musgrove, who's been really bad pitching at home this year. Both have ERAs over 5 in those situations. So more so than the Pirates' money line, I actually like the over in this game because Joe Musgrove, ERA of about 5.5 at home. Hendricks, ERA over 5 on the road. This is a spot where it could be kind of an under-the-radar shootout and even a low-owned type stack situation for DFS.
All right, do the woes continue for Hendricks, Steve?
Yeah, I mean, you look at Hendricks' numbers, too. There's a massive, massive difference when he's away from Wrigley Field. And, PNC Park isn't exactly a hitter-friendly ballpark, but, the numbers are there. I mean, he's got a 360 WOBA, 5.12 xFIP, 11 of his 17 home runs allowed. And then you look at the Pirates' offense. Like, on paper, they don't really, scream at you like this is a lineup that makes you nervous or anything, but they're averaging 6.8 runs per game over their last 5 games. I mentioned the struggles that Hendricks has on the road here, so I actually like the Pirates a lot as a stacking option. Greg brought up that this has shootout potential. I'm not as excited about the Cubs, I think, that he is, but I think the Pirates bring some excellent value here on this slate, especially when you're paying up for guys like Charlie Morton and such like that. So I think the woes for Hendricks continue here. I think the Pirates knock him out of this game early.
All right, gents, thank you so much. We'll do a little bit of hot or not later on, talking some preseason football. 3 games tonight after Jesse Cofield catches up with former Reds player Tracy Jones.
Joining me now is former Reds player Tracy Jones. Tracy, thanks for coming on The Sweat.
Thanks for having me, Jesse.
Now, you made your MLB debut back in 1986 for the Reds, and Pete Rose was the manager at that time. What was it like getting to play for him?
Pete's kind of a different cat. He's very high energy. All he's asking for you to do is to play hard. And I can remember in 1986 going into spring training. I was never supposed to make the ball club. And they had 24-man roster. Then it wasn't 25. And we were all getting on the bus to go on the plane to go opening day in Cincinnati. And I finally walked up to Pete and said, Pete, did I make the club? Because no one told me if I made it or I didn't. I wasn't supposed to make it. He says, Trace, let me give you some piece of advice. If I were you, I'd get on that bus and keep your mouth shut. Because if it wasn't for me, you wouldn't be on this club. So, I got my mouth shut, got on the bus, and the rest is history. Got to play opening day. Just played the first ball that was ever hit to me. It was by Gary Reedus of the Phillies, and ended up getting a triple. But we ended up winning the ball game and got a couple of hits and a couple stolen bases. So a lot happened that year.
So I got to ask you, as someone who played for him, do you think Rose belongs in the Hall of Fame?
Well, I'm I'm a tough guy to ask that question to because he gave me a break and gave me a chance to play in the big leagues. I'm one of those guys that are extremely loyal. If I like you, you can do no wrong. Now, if I dislike you, then I'm going to try to get back at you. But Pete's one of those guys, I consider him a friend, and he gave me a chance in the big league, and absolutely I'd like to see Pete in the Hall of Fame.
Okay, I'll be sure to stay on your good side here. All right, in 1988, you asked Pete Rose to be traded, and 2 days later, you were shipped to Montreal. Now, this is a decision that you've said you regret. Why do you say that?
Well, it was being so immature. As a young player, I made so many mistakes. And I thought, as athletes sometimes do, that the world revolves around you, and it doesn't. And if I wasn't happy, I was going to make it known that I was dissatisfied. I wasn't playing every day. I was platooning with Cal Daniels and Paul O'Neill, but I hurt my knee 2 months earlier, and I just was unhappy and wanted to play somewhere else. And they shipped me off to Montreal, which is probably the worst place to go. I mean, that Milwaukee is probably the worst place to actually play. Great players on that team: Hubie Brooks, Tim Raines, Tim Wallach. Buck Rogers was the manager. They're fantastic. But as far as the city of playing baseball, I think Montreal is one of the worst.
Well, that might answer this next question. I was going to say this year we heard about the possibility of the Rays spending part of their season up in Montreal. I'm going to guess you don't love that idea.
That's a horrible idea. That's terrible. I mean, it's not working in Tampa Bay, and they've got a heck of a ball club. What makes you think that it's going to work again in Montreal? I mean, we were in second place in 1988 behind the Mets. We're like 4 games out of first place. We're drawing 5,000 people to the game. They liked Hubie, the mascot, more than they did at Tim Raines or Tim Wallach. It's just not a good baseball town. It's a hockey town.
All right, now let's talk a little bit about this current Reds team. They just called up Aristides Aquino, who's having one of the most exciting first few weeks in the majors we've really ever seen. I mean, 7 homers in his first 10 games. Does he have the city just buzzing right now?
Everybody's talking about Aquino. Actually, it's 9 home runs in 44 at-bats. Who does this? I mean, you can't even, if you go back and I've played Little League Baseball, and if I was 20 years old playing Little League Baseball, I don't think I'd hit 9 home runs and 44 at-bats. And this is the big leagues. He's an exciting ball player, and the Reds certainly are going in the right direction.
Well, the Reds made a couple of big moves at the deadline, sending Yasiel Puig and Scooter Gennett out of town and bringing Trevor Bauer in. Do you like the direction that they're going right now?
I think the number one job of an organization is to get 2 number 1 starters. They have Castillo, and now with Bauer, you've got 2 number 1 starters. I don't know how the Reds pulled off that trade. Puig is a very good ball player. Fans love him here in Cincinnati. They really do. And they love him in Cleveland. They loved him in Los Angeles. But when you can get a Trevor Bauer, I mean, that's a big move. I think it's a great, great trade.
Well, Yasiel Puig is certainly a great player, but he's going to serve his 3-game suspension this week, stemming from that brawl he had with the Pirates when he was still with Cincy. Now, this wasn't the first scrap Puig's been involved in his career. Do you think he's more trouble than he's worth?
Well, Jesse, let me just say this. I've seen bench-clearing brawls, 3 of them this year, and Puig's really good at going around the pile and saying, hold me back, hold me back. I mean, now Amir Garrett, throwing his glove down and running in the dugout, now that's a guy with some guts. But as far as Puig and being a tough guy, I really don't see him. But he's a very good ball player, and fans love him because he plays 100%.
Okay, a lot of moves happening, as we said. So how far from being contenders do you think the Reds are right now?
I think they're really close. I mean, you have a pitching staff that is 3rd or 4th in ERA, striking out a lot of batters. And when it tells me when you're striking out a lot of guys that your pitching staff has pretty good stuff. You got Jesse Winker, who I like. You got Senzel. And now you got Aquino in right field. Suarez, I think, is one of the most underrated players in the game of baseball. I mean, he has 33 home runs. Votto's still a good ball player. You've got your pitching staff. The problem is with the Reds, they're in a very tough division. I mean, you've got the Cardinals, the Cubs, and the Brewers. But they are going in the right direction.
Now, you still live in the Cincinnati area. When you landed there as a player, did you know you'd be there for a good part of your life?
Well, Jesse, you don't remember because you're a young girl, but I was very popular as a player. Fans loved me. So I was down in Florida and got an opportunity to do a radio show with a guy by the name of Andy Furman, who did sports talk here in Cincinnati on 700 WOW, which is the flagship station of the Cincinnati Reds. So I got a chance to do that and then got into radio. I got my financial business, and I love the city of Cincinnati. It's my type of mentality, let's say, more conservative than the LA kind of goofy attitude they have there.
Okay, week 2 of the NFL preseason resumes this evening. 3 games, Bills at Panthers, top of the hour, then Bears at Giants, Dolphins at Bucks, both at 7:30 Eastern. 3 games. I've got the 3 best analysts anyone could have on a Friday night. DK Live's Jeff Ulrich, Reed Fowler, and Steve Buchanan. Hello, gentlemen.
Hi.
What's up?
Good to talk to you all. Let's assist the people with preseason picks at each position. Which quarterback do you like? We know we won't see Cam Newton. He's already been ruled out. Reed, would you want to start us off?
Yeah, I mean, Blaine Gabbert would be my first pick, which is usually not something I'd like to say and put on record or put on tape. But look, I mean, he's had experience with Bruce Arians before his time in Arizona when Arians was there. And look, this is going to be a competition. I think when you look at what these guys have behind Jameis Winston, you're seeing a lot of run out of both of these quarterbacks. Gabbert has the ability to actually run the ball as well. So I think taking a look at him, but even the Chicago game, the Bears just tweeted out their who's not playing list, and Trubisky's not going to be playing. And so Chase Daniel, Tyler Bray, those guys could also be someone to take a look at as well.
Jeff, who's the man under center you're looking at on this 3-game slate?
Yeah, I mean, I'll stick with the same. I mean, the Bears quarterbacks come a little bit more interesting, but those guys are kind of both terrible. So I'll stick with Tampa, but I'm going to go with the other guy, Ryan Griffin. It's probably mainly going to be Blaine Gabbert in the Ryan Griffin show. I'll just take Griffin because, A, he got more snaps than Gabbert in the first preseason game. I might switch a little bit, but I'd still expect to see more Ryan Griffin. Bruce Arians knows what he has in Blaine Gabbert. Reed mentioned that he's had him on his team before. And the other factor is Griffin's going to come in second, so he's going to play against weaker competition. I'm almost always going to take that situation versus taking the guy who's got to play against the ones.
Steve, perhaps a quarterback from a different game?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Josh Rosen here. Like, at the end of the day, the Dolphins are looking for Rosen to be their quarterback. I mean, they need to see him a lot more than they need to see Ryan Fitzpatrick. And, you know, there's some reports out there that Rosen could end up seeing about 3 quarters tonight. And, you know, in a preseason game, you know, you definitely want to be jumping all over that if you're getting a quarterback with getting that many snaps tonight. So his ownership has got to be high. That's the other thing, too. I mean, I think he's the quote-unquote sexy play on this slate, which doesn't really say much. But I think Rosen's the guy here, especially if he's going to be getting the amount of time that he's supposedly going to be getting tonight. So I think Rosen's the guy for me.
All right, you guys are really into this Battle of Florida game here. How about running back? Saquon Barkley's out for the Giants. Miami situation's interesting. Kenyon Drake was in a boot, so he ain't playing. Jeff, running back?
Yeah, I'm actually going to go to Buffalo. Again, it's kind of a nice situation to target. I mean, you have the 3 veterans up there that just aren't going to play. The 2 3, yeah, because Yeldon, Gore, and LaShawn McCoy, they're just not going to play much. You're basically left with Devin Singletary and Marcus Murphy. I'm going to go with Marcus Murphy. I think he's going to be the lesser owned. Marcus Murphy's a pretty accomplished, little passing back. I mean, he had his spurts with the New Orleans Saints too. And again, you're getting the player that's probably going to see more weaker competition. They'll probably roll Singletary out there first. They might mix him a little bit, but I'd expect Murphy to get more of that mop-up time. So, both those backs are in play. I'll lean Marcus Murphy.
Steve?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Ryan Nall here. I mean, he's basically fighting for a role on this team here. We saw in week 1, he handled 5 carries. He had 4 receptions against the Panthers. And, obviously David Montgomery's going to be in the mix here. But, it's easy to forget that Nall was probably their best running back last preseason. He had 32 carries, 223 yards, scored a touchdown, had some work in the passing game too as well. So if they're going to feature him like they did in week 1, I think there's no reason to not go back to that well and take him here in week 2. I think he's going to be getting more consistent snaps like he was back in week 1.
All right, Reed, running back you like?
Yeah, I'm sticking with Buffalo and going with Singletary in terms of what Jeff was mentioning. When you look at what this guy hopes to be, right, McDermott looks at this, and clearly the organization in Buffalo looks at this guy to be the number 1 guy. I mean, I know you bring in Frank Gore for insurance and having that veteran leadership in the backfield, and LaShawn McCoy and TJ Yeldon, these guys aren't, even if they were healthy, these guys aren't necessarily the future of this team. You're going to try and look at different schemes. You're not going to show the entire playbook. But I think when you look at what this guy's been able to do, right now he's going 11th in ADP. I think it's, again, looking at as much as you can the volume of this player. In Carolina, they changed up their defensive scheme. They've gone from I believe a 4-3 defense last year to a 3-4. I think they're still going through some changes, some growing pains. I think that works in Singletary's favor.
All right, and just so everyone knows, all of these players are the same salary, $5,500. So, I mean, again, as these guys are given picks, they're really looking in deep because we don't know what playing time. How about wide receiver, Steve? You have a name or two that you're looking at for tonight?
I'm sure if you've been following along with any preseason news, you've definitely heard of Preston Williams. And especially if you're going to be taking Josh Rosen tonight, this is the guy you want to stack him with here. 4 catches, 97 yards in week 1. All we've been hearing about how he's just been destroying first-team defenses during their practices. I wouldn't be surprised if he's the highest-owned receiver tonight as well. But again, you're taking Rosen. Really makes a lot of sense to take Preston Williams here in this squad. So I think you got to look at him. If all the buzz is true, and like we saw some of it in week 1, Preston Williams has a good chance to put up some high fantasy points here in this game.
Yeah, and Miami's top-end guys are banged up. It looks like they're not going to get action. So how about you, Reed?
It's going to be Benny Fowler. I mentioned the Giants and Daniel Jones. This guy hasn't gotten hit yet in terms of his preseason snaps. I think that changes tonight a little bit, especially with Chicago. Even though there's starters on defense, a ton of them, if not all, aren't playing in this game. Chicago is going to be aggressive against this quarterback, against Daniel Jones. And I think when you look at him, too, as well, he's going to be with the first team. And Benny Fowler is the guy that is behind Golden Tate right now on the depth chart. He's going to stick to the middle of the field. That's what you have to do in these shorter routes. I think Benny Fowler does get a lot of routes run. He has to make this. He has to do much or do a lot to make this team. These guys, the Giants, that is, they have a lot of injuries and a lot of question marks at the receiver position. So Benny Fowler, maybe with the Daniel Jones stack.
Jeff, wide out.
I guess Reed and I are just on the complete opposite ends of everything today because I'm taking TJ Jones. This is basically the opposite of Benny Fowler. Look, TJ Jones really surprised in the first preseason game. He's kind of signed off the street, but he's a decent player. He stuck around with Detroit for a few years. He's actually Golden Tate's backup in Detroit, a similar kind of player. I prefer him over Benny Fowler. Benny Fowler's done nothing over his NFL career. I don't really expect him to start now. I think TJ Jones is playing for a job. I really like the way he flashed. He also worked well with Kyle Lauletta, their third stringer, who should get some run tonight. So I'll take TJ Jones over Benny Fowler.
Okay, I know you guys love analyzing preseason defenses, but we ran out of time, so we got to move on. Thanks so much. We'll chat it up with Mike Francesa in a couple of minutes after Pierce Dietrich explains the salaries for the Bass Pro Shops NRA night race down in Bristol, Tennessee. It is NASCAR Price Check.
Welcome to Price Check. I'm Pierce Dietrich. Let's look at the salaries for Bristol, whose salary jumped up this week. Kyle Larson, $8,300 up to $9,200. Yet another great racetrack ruined by this high downforce package. Larson has been better lately, but he is not the old Larson. Denny Hamlin, $9,900 up to $10,700. You know what? He is due for a penalty that ruins his race or a loose wheel. This feels like an excuses type of race for Hamlin. Kurt Busch, $8,900 up to $9,500. He won last year's Bristol night race, and in this year's first Bristol race, he scored the 4th most fantasy points. Whose salary dropped this week? Ryan Blaney, $9,700 down to $8,600. His price has been all over the place, and this is probably too cheap because he led 158 laps in the first Bristol race. William Byron, $7,700 down to $6,800. Not the greatest day in the first Bristol race, but a lot of that was because of 2 late race penalties. If he avoids the penalties, he should be fine this weekend. Paul Menard, $6,900 down to $6,200. Too cheap. In these 16 races with a similar price tag, 13 times he's earned a top 20 DFS score. Favorite play of the week, Kyle Busch, $12,700. No price is too high when there are 500 laps. He has won 3 of the last 4 races at Bristol. David Reagan, $5,400 in the last 6 Bristol races. 2 times he's finished 21st. 2 times he's finished 17th. He's finished 23rd and a 12th place finish. I will take that from the not yet retired punt. All right, guys, check out the DK Playbook for your DFS information and needs. If you have NASCAR questions, hit me up on Twitter @RaceForThePrize. I'm Pierce Dietrich. Catch me on DK Live.
All right, WFAN's Mike Francesa stops on by, weekly visit here at DraftKings. Want to start with Andrew Luck. He's going to miss the entire preseason. That was news from earlier in the week. How concerned are you?
I'm always concerned when it's Luck because he has a habit of taking time with injuries, and he's as valuable to his team as anybody is in the league. This is another one of these strange cases with him. He's had the calf injury since March. It hasn't healed. Now he's got a high ankle sprain to go with the calf injury. So now it's really nursing two injuries. Calf injuries are very hard to get healed completely anyway. They did the right thing. They shut him down for preseason completely. They shut him down not only for games, they shut him down for practices. He's not going to practice. He is not going to do anything on the field. And they're saying he's iffy for week one. You know what? Hopefully he's ready for week one. They can't win without him. But he's capable of doing it without any work. He's one of the few players. He's a very smart kid, as you know. He was a brilliant student in college. He can handle that offense without a lot of prep. So I think he's able to do that. They're handling it the right way, but I would be concerned. I think anytime Luck is hurt, you got to be concerned because it does take him a while to come back from injuries.
We got a second look at Kyler Murray in preseason action. He struggled. And look, you told me on Monday you can't judge these young guys, especially quarterbacks, off the practice games. I agree with you. And like you said, there will be a public outcry from the fans, positive, negative, how he performs. So I ask you, the safety, couple of false starts, we'll get to the clap snap thing. Is it fair to say this might have been a good thing for Murray to struggle a bit?
I don't think it's ever a good thing to have a quarterback have those kind of problems. But again, they're normal. I mean, they're growing pains. I think he's going to have a very tough transition. I really do. I don't think it's going to be smooth at all. I know that people like his skill set, but it's a very tough skill set to make work in the NFL. Yes, he's quick. Yes, he's got a good arm, but he's a little man. And you know what? He almost reminds me of Doug Flutie. And the league could never figure out how to utilize Flutie. They've learned to utilize smaller quarterbacks better in what now is a very movable league, and a league where a lot of stuff is done on the run and a lot of stuff is done very quickly. It's a different offense they've run now. It's more spread out, so it's made it easier for the smaller quarterback. But I think he will struggle. I'm not surprised. I would be surprised if he lit it up. I think it will be a tough first year for him. They say his arm is really good. Everyone who sees it says it's a really legitimate arm, even though he's a small guy. Let's see. I'll hold my thoughts until I watch him in a real game, but I'm not expecting a whole lot right off the bat.
Head coach Cliff Kingsbury was explaining to the officials on the broadcast, you could see it, Murray was doing the clap snap, which is something he adopted from college. Does the former Oklahoma quarterback have to ditch it? Can that last?
Can't last. You can't do it. It won't work. You can't. It's not fair. It's something that's going to pull defenses offside. It's not fair. It's got to stop. That's it. You can't do it. It's a penalty. It cannot be done. There's no way to do it. He's got to ditch it. You can't. There's no way to do that in the NFL.
Over in Oakland, Antonio Brown returned to practice. You said he'd regret wasting his talent with these off-field antics and whatnot. He's back, having a blast, like nothing happened. John Gruden said he's optimistic. Hell yeah, great to have him back. And then the same sentiments from the quarterback, Derek Carr. They're babying this guy. Are they handling him properly, knowing what he's all about?
No, but he's a hard guy to handle because everything's a problem. I mean, he comes in and it's a problem from head to toe. He doesn't like his helmet, and his feet are bothering him because he almost had suffered. This is a guy who went to Paris, did the cryptotherapy, and almost gave himself frostbite. Now, if you actually do get frostbite, your toes are never coming back. Luckily, it was the bottom of his feet. They actually used a scalpel to bleed his feet out afterwards. He could have lost the use of his feet if he had not done that. I mean, it was actually, he's playing with fire over there with that. That was a dangerous situation. I have a friend who's an orthopedic surgeon who said, you know what, he could have lost a couple of toes if he didn't watch it. Luckily, It was the bottom of his feet. But, I mean, you got to watch this stuff that he's into. Everything's a problem with him. To me, you're going to look back on it, his whole career, everything's going to be a problem. I just think that's the way it is. His helmet doesn't work. His feet get frozen. he's not happy, he's this, it's that. It's always going to be something. And yes, they baby him because now they baby all the stars in the NFL.
Our friend Emerson Latzia is at the friendly confines, meeting some new friends, making friends. He met up with the World Fantasy Baseball Championship qualifiers earlier today at Wrigley Field.
You qualifying for this tournament, what do you remember from that night?
Okay, so it was one of the very first qualifiers. I'd say one of the first 5 of the year.
I max entered the 170, which gives you 10 entries. And I had a lineup that was winning the whole night.
I had a Seattle 5-man, so 5 guys from Seattle, and I think they got...
You're doing a Seattle stack.
Yeah, Seattle stack, and I think they got 11 runs or so.
And then at the end, I got somebody jump me, and then I had another lineup lower, and it was the Diamondbacks, and they went off in like the 6th, 7th inning.
And I ended up winning by a point, I believe.
And I just jumped up to the top.
Were you watching all night? Were you just dialed in, focused, or was it something where you went to bed and you woke up and then you saw it the next step?
I watched it. I hate being that guy who watches and sweats the games, but I can't help myself. It's human nature, right?
I literally told my girlfriend, I was sitting next to her, I literally said, I'm deleting the app tomorrow because I was winning the whole night and then I got jumped. I'm like, I'm not even having fun right now.
It must have been one hell of a sweat, man.
It was. I don't think it was too bad at the end, but again, you never know in baseball. Anything can happen.
Okay. Right.
And then I became like the biggest, like, it's what I do.
That's right. I never give up. Never give up. You have a strategy. Is there any secrets that you can unveil and reveal to us right now?
My strategy is to get very lucky. Okay. I need all the luck I can get.
Okay. I mean, I'm just going to trust my math. That's what I always do. Trust my process, trust my math. And then I'm going to start messing around with different builds and see what build I like the most. Good to go? A special shout out to Eduardo Escobar for bringing me to Chicago, and Jordan Lyles, who struck out like 10 Padres for me. Much love.
Xander.
And Xander Bogaerts for seat number 2. Thank you.
Congrats to all of you qualifiers. You know who else is roaming the grass of Wrigley? Former Cubs pitcher Sean Marshall. He spent 6 of his 9 major league seasons as a member of the Cubbies. Just can't get enough of that Wrigley scene. So back out to Emerson, who chatted with Marshall.
What's up, guys? Emerson Latzia here inside historic Wrigley Field, baby. Sean Marshall, what's going on, man? It's good to have you here, dude.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Good memories pop up when you're back inside this ballpark?
It is. Oh, it was a good place. Yeah, I had my major league debut in 2006. They threw me right in the fire. ESPN game against Cardinals.
No pressure.
No pressure. So I was able to get to about the 5th inning. We're down a couple runs. Michael Barrett grand slam in the bottom of the 8th inning. Place was shaking. One of my favorite memories at Wrigley Field on my debut, which was, and they've had a lot of great memories here since.
So you've, you still live in the area here. How often do you frequent the ballpark and come back and watch games?
Yeah, a handful of times. I got 4 kids now, and I'm able to.
That's a full-time job.
It's a full-time job. Got some baseball-loving boys. The older ones are really into baseball, so I get to bring them down. The Cubs family, the front office, they take care of the former players, so they always get us a nice seat in the ballpark, a nice friendly welcome from the ushers and everybody around here. It's just a great place to enjoy a ball game, much like Fenway Park in Boston. Yeah, no doubt.
When your twin brother obviously was a member of the Red Sox organization. He knows a lot about Boston. You visit there a lot. That's where the DraftKings headquarters is, by the way. You should visit sometime.
Yeah, I enjoyed our several visits there playing the Red Sox, both with the Cubs and with the Cincinnati Reds. But yeah, it's a great city and obviously a gigantic sports town. Yeah. And who doesn't like all the New England sports teams up there? It's great.
Yeah, just like parade after parade after parade. It gets old after a while.
I guess maybe to some, but diehard sports fans like the Chicago sports fans, they enjoy every single one of them. And I know the Boston fans do too.
Looking back on your career, you begin as a starter, you kind of go to a reliever role. I mean, which one did you prefer more, and how different were they for you?
I really enjoyed coming out of the bullpen, and mostly because if I was to have a poor start, you sit around 4-5 days, think about what you can do better next time. Whereas a reliever, you might have a tough game or some success, and you're right back in there in the next game. So I enjoyed that. The quick turnaround, being in action often, was what I preferred more, being a reliever and mostly a setup reliever in most of my career.
And you didn't throw too many fastballs. You're more like a breaking ball guy. I guess, when did you know that was just your pitch and you were just going to ride that and make that your thing?
Yeah, I always had a good breaking ball. I think I picked it up when I was about 12 years old, and It's probably a little bit young in terms of standards, what they teach the kids now. But with proper technique, I think it's a fairly safe pitch, and it was able to work out pretty well for me. But yeah, I was a backwards pitcher, kind of breaking balls first, kind of slow the hitter down, made my 90, 91 mile an hour fastball seem a little bit faster, and I was able to have some success. And once I saw some of the breakdowns on the success, like batting averages against the curveball versus the four-seam fastball, I was like, why would I throw these guys heaters? They all hit heaters. And so I was able to pitch backwards and have some success doing that.
You see anyone in the game today that reminds you a lot of yourself?
There's a few guys, a couple of guys still sticking around, like a Jerry Blevins reliever. I think he was with the Mets for several years. I saw him pitching yesterday. I don't remember which team, but yeah, often pitch backwards, with a solid, 12-6 sweeping curveball. Some of the starters I like Kyle Hendricks. He's a right-handed pitcher, obviously, and I was a lefty, but they pitch, they don't have the speed, so they have to rely on execution and changing speeds and location.
Finesse,
The finesse game, yeah. It's exactly what it is. And I had some success doing that, able to get away and have some success with, less of the speed and velocity, relying more on command. And
you got to work with what you got, right?
You got to do it, yeah. Your cards are dealt, and you got to deal them out, man. It's good.
And you know what? You were dealing cards to a lot of legendary, hitters in this game. Some still playing, like an Albert Pujols. I mean, you went up against like Barry Bonds.
Yeah.
What are some of the memories you have going up against these mammoth hitters in baseball?
That's the exact word. When Barry Bonds came to face me, I faced him with the Giants a few times, and I faced him here at Wrigley Field. The guy steps up in the batter's box, and he was one of the only players that actually fills the entire batter's box up. And I threw
how the hell am I supposed to do this?
I threw a nice slider like around the corner, and he just took it. And I was like, oh, that might be a pitch I can get him out with. I threw the same pitch like 2 pitches later, launched it for like 740th home run into the right field wall over there, into the wind, I think. But yeah, these big hitters, Albert Pujols, obviously, what a career he's had, and he's still going. Just same thing, mammoth. Just you know what you're going to get, and only a properly executed pitch is going to get him out. And I was able to have some luck with the breaking ball against him, but he took me deep up in Big Mac land too. So these guys are paid the big bucks to hit homers sometimes, and yeah, you always tip your cap to the good hitters.
You're not too intimidated though when he gets up there, right? Any of these guys like back in the day?
Well, at first, yeah, I didn't know anything. I barely knew how to pitch when I first got called up to the Cubs in 2006, but you kind of learn as you go. And the key for the young rookies that come up is knowing that you're able to fit in the big leagues. You're there for a reason, and just trusting your stuff. And so I was able to kind of get used to the pressure, used to the crowds, and being on TV, and just kind of worry about playing catch with the catcher and executing pitches, and had some success that way.
Let's not sleep on your power at the plate, right? You had one carear home run. Yeah. You remember who it was against?
Yeah, El Duque.
Okay. Do you remember the details of this at bat?
Yeah, it was a 2-0 count. He's like, I'm not going to throw the pitcher another ball strike zone to me, about a 91 mile an hour fastball. And I pretty much closed my eyes and threw it in the jet stream here at Wrigley Field, and it landed a couple rows deep.
All right, do you still have that baseball?
I didn't get the ball. The guy
didn't get the ball.
He wanted like season tickets and to meet the team. And I was like,
dude, I'm a reliever. Come on.
I kept the bat. I'm like, it's all good, But it quickly turned from one of my best games. I pitched really well. Came out maybe the 6th inning against the Mets. Error, walk, blue pit, grand slam. Maybe I got the next guy on, got the hook from Lou Piniella at the time. Reliever came in, another grand slam. The score went from us ahead by 6 or so to us down by 5. I think 11 runs in 1 inning, which is, I'm sure it doesn't happen much. 2 grand slams.
The highs and lows, man.
You never know in this game. You never know.
You really don't. I think another fun fact about you is, okay, you get married, it was just a few years ago, to a woman named Sarah. So it's Sarah Marshall. We're talking just like the movie. I'm sure that gets super annoying and old after a while, doesn't it?
Can't forget Sarah Marshall, yeah. So every time she shows her credit card.
Don't forget your wife, because you have 4 kids and she will hate you.
That's right. But yeah, every time she shows a credit card, people look at it kind of like, oh, you're Sarah Marshall. But another fun story about us getting married is Ernie Banks.
Yes, Mr. Cub married you guys, right?
He would always be like, when are you going to marry that girl? And I said, Ernie, I heard you're a certified minister. You want to marry us? And he said, okay. And I believe we were the first person that were ever married by Ernie Banks. And what a thrill for her, which is from Chicago, and her family that came, and people show up to our wedding and our wedding reception. Ernie Banks is sitting at the bar having a drink, and it was pretty cool night.
What a legend. I mean, were you just staying there at times where you were struggling to focus on your wife and you're just like, oh, this is Ernie?
Ernie Banks in the house. But yeah, he was such a great man, and he's so well loved here in Chicago, and I'm sure all over. It was tough to lose him a few years ago, but some great memories that he gave all the Cubs fans, and in particular some Cubs fans in my family. With our wedding, fantastic.
Yeah. And speaking of family too, you have a twin brother, and you guys were both drafted 2013. And he ended up, suiting up with the Red Sox. Right. So, I mean, what was that rivalry like between you guys?
And that was Theo. Theo drafted him, too, as well. We were always very competitive.
Man, it's like full circle here with everything.
Man, I mean, Theo's taken over the whole baseball world, really. Mm-hmm. But it was a great day at the Marshall house. He was drafted in the 5th round to the Red Sox, and I was drafted, a dozen picks or so later in the 6th round. Yeah. And we kind of separated. We would always play together, same team, compete against each other all the time. He was my throwing partner and my biggest competition, which forced us to kind of get better at all of our sports that we played. But, he parted his ways, went up to the Northeast up there, pitching several of the minor leagues with the Red Sox. Unfortunately, ran into some arm issues, and but had a brief career, but a solid career.
So, like, growing up with a twin brother, I ask when other athletes come on who have a twin brother, growing up, did you guys did you play a lot of tricks on people? Or, you send like the wrong guy into the, a different classroom, or maybe like you didn't feel like going out with your girlfriend one night, so you send your brother?
I'm sure that's happened. We're not identical twins, but as kids, we looked almost identical.
Yeah, close enough.
And even in college, I would be the starting pitcher and he was a reliever mostly. So I'd pitch a handful of innings, 5-6 innings, and they'd switch pitchers. He was also lefty. And you would never know that we switched. And so I think I was number 34. He was number 35. If you weren't paying attention to that, you missed it. But yeah, I mean, I always had, it was competitions with him and everything. And I have 2 other brothers, so there's 4 Marshall boys, and it was just a competition.
God bless your parents.
Who could eat more? It was
lots of trips to like Sam's Club and Costco.
Oh, no doubt. Yeah, we'd come home. I went to school at Virginia Commonwealth University in Richmond, which is where I'm from. And back home on Sundays to raid the Costco just to feed everybody up every time. But great memories growing up, having 3 brothers and just the competition and, the brotherly love with that for sure.
So, now I know you're busy with the 4 kids, but how much are you into fantasy sports? Are you playing a lot of fantasy sports? Have you in the past?
We played a ton of fantasy football. Yep. Back during our club, in the clubhouse with the teams. And I had some pretty good success. I would be like, hey, ask the rookies because they had a little cheaper buy-in. You need another player, and then I'd take the rookies' money. It was pretty fun for a couple of years. But yeah,
so you were the man when it came to fantasy football in the Cubs clubhouse.
They kicked me out. I was trying to.
Is that why they sent you to the Reds?
The Reds. I was taking the Reds guys' money like crazy. But it's fun, and obviously DraftKings, you guys open a new chapter in the fantasy sports and the.
For sure, man. Any sport you can think of, man. DraftKings is the way to go.
I tried it. And I didn't have much success, so I kind of got off.
No one likes a quitter, Sean. All right, get back on there. No, they don't. Especially money too.
Exactly, but it's fun, and you guys are doing some great things, I'm sure. And I know you guys have a huge following and man. Gigantic.
I mean, we are here inside Wrigley Field, just having ourselves a day. Play a little game in the show or no. So it's very simple. I know you're new to this. Basically, the name I give you, is it the name of a real Major League Baseball player, either past or present, or did we just completely make it up?
Okay.
Are you ready?
Yeah, let's try it out.
All right, first name. There's no promises there. Tony Suck. Tony Suck.
I would say no.
Real. And he actually did suck. He was not very good. He also played like 150 years ago. That's okay, you didn't know that. Yeah, right? All right, I believe he was a catcher as well. Next one, hairy cheek. Hairy cheek. Like you have hairy cheeks right now because you haven't shaved.
Yeah. In the show.
In the show, correct. All right. Batting 500 right now, kid. Butch Worm Hicks. Butch Worm Hicks.
Worm is his nickname, huh?
You tell me.
Pitcher?
I don't know.
In the show.
Nah, totally fake. But yeah, it sounds just like the other real ones that we gave you, which actually sounded fake. Okay, 1 for 3, still hitting 333. Sully Von Frack. Sully Von Frack.
Sully Von Frack. What do you
It
guys
actually
get these
sounds like
names?
like an actor. I don't know. Billy behind the camera there. He makes most of them up.
I'll say he's in the show. Give me the
That is incorrect, bro. Man. Oh, wow. Yes. Yes, it is. It's okay. You're a pitcher. You're not supposed to have a great average. Icicle Reader. Icicle Reader.
You guys kidding me with these names?
Dude, just answer the question.
Icicle Reader. I'm going to go in the show.
In the show. Real. Congratulations. Yes, you are.
Okay.
2 more for you. Bud Weiser. Bud Weiser.
That's a great name.
It is a great name. It's on top of that scoreboard right there.
Big sponsor out here. He's not in the show. No.
That is a real one, dude. He played like 2 games or something like 300 years ago. But it's real. I know. Yes. No.
Stayed around a long time.
Yep. Gone too soon. Okay. Last one. Roy Tuck Tuck Donk. Roy Tuck Tuck Donk.
Tuck Dunk?
Tuck Tuck Donk, man. Get it right.
He's going to go in the show again.
No, he's not. God. No one would name their son Roy Tuck Tuck Donk. All right, man. Good stuff. I forget why you're batting now, but you know what? We've had guys who've done much worse, like Steve Garvey. Okay. Good talking to you, Sean. Thanks, man.
Appreciate it.
All right, thanks to all of you guys over there in Chicago for their hard work. Large 15-game slate in the majors, so let's get some DFS picks before lock. We'll do that after Adam Kaufman speaks with baseball's one and only Chris Martin, Braves pitcher.
Well, it's great to have Braves pitcher Chris Martin on the sweat. What's up, man? How are you?
I'm good. How you guys doing?
Good, good. Now, obviously, you got a new cap there. You were just dealt recently from your hometown Rangers to Atlanta at the trade deadline. How did that hit you?
Initial reaction was, I had to think about my family and what they were going to have to go through. But, initial reaction was I was excited. I knew these guys were, battling it out for a pennant race. And, I've never been a part of that. And I was just looking forward to playing some meaningful baseball here down the stretch.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask you about, because I'm sure it was difficult to leave home and like you said, all the family considerations. But you go from a team that, unfortunately, obviously for the Rangers, but one that season is kind of all but over, to a club that currently with the second best record in the National League. And as you said, you haven't had that opportunity just yet to pitch in the playoffs. So how invigorating is that for you personally?
Yeah, it's a big motivation booster. I was looking forward, excited to it, for it. Just trying to get on track right now and getting a good rhythm and to help this ball team.
Is it difficult transitioning with a new club?
I think it's a little bit different. I've been traded a couple of times, been on some new teams. You get to know guys in spring training. You kind of have that spring training feel, but at the same time, like there's something big on the line here, and you got to lock it in quick. A lot of things off the field that you're dealing with as well that a lot of people don't see, with family and stuff like that. So, just getting situated and getting comfortable and is a big key, and to do that as quick as you can so that you can have to go out there and compete and help the ball club.
Is it difficult to, avoid putting that pressure on yourself? Because like you said, there are aspects of kind of a spring training mentality where you want to work through stuff, but also it's, you're diving right into a pennant chase, so you feel like you need to go out there and perform immediately.
Right. Before I left, I had some of the veteran relievers from Texas, or veteran pitchers from Texas, tell me like, hey, this is a different situation. It's going to be tough, getting traded at the deadline, going to a new team. And I just, I was like, I'm mentally strong and I can handle it. It's not going to be a big deal. But you always have that little piece in the back of your mind that's kind of, I don't know, steering you in a different direction. But I think with getting comfortable and getting to know the guys and the staff and everybody around here is going to be huge going forward.
All you guys, and when I say that, I mean baseball players, professional athletes. It's the how I reached the pros story, and yours is not like most others. You were younger, you quit baseball after a college injury, worked in a warehouse for 3 years. Do you remember the moment when you decided to give it another shot?
Yeah. It was a pretty easy decision for me to make. I didn't really have it wasn't a great job. I kind of did that on purpose so that I would always, keep the dream alive. If something did were to come up, it would have been it was easy, to put in the 2 weeks notice and chase the dream. So yeah, I was excited and definitely really grateful for it. So.
Do you regret the time away that, now that you've made it at this point? Do you look back on those 3 years and say, what if I'd been attempting to play baseball back then? Or do you feel like it was a valuable time to get you to obviously where you are?
Right. There's always some regrets there, but I think I learned from them. If I were to went ahead and signed out of high school or out of junior college, who knows what would have happened? Being not just mentally as a kid, would I have been able to handle it? Like, who knows? I could have been released and done with baseball, but I think my path, it humbled me a lot, and I think it's definitely driven me to where I'm at today.
You still talk to anybody from back in the warehouse?
I did a few years back, but I'm starting to lose touch now that I'm not at home anymore.
Sure.
I usually see a lot of people at the games show up and say hi and stuff like that. But here in Atlanta, obviously, I don't know a whole lot of people, so I'm sure that's kind of going to go away. So.
Well, and you've been around obviously a little bit. You pitched for the Rockies, the Yankees, some mixed success with those clubs. Then you spent a couple of years really away. You were in Japan. You thrived there, though, an all-star your first year overseas, equally good in year 2. Is that really when everything clicked for you?
I think confidence-wise and the mentality changed for me. The first year, back against the wall, I was down to my last straw, really. So it was either make or break, and I did the best that I could to just keep moving forward and using Japan as a stepping stone to get back over here to the States. And it wasn't all. It was a great experience. It was a lot of fun. I learned a lot about myself on and off the field. I think that's, has a lot to do with what I'm doing today. And obviously last year with the Rangers was huge too. Just knowing that I belong in this league, and it's a big compliment.
Thanks to Chris and Adam. We will stay on the diamond to wrap up tonight's show. DK Live's Greg Ehrenberg returns, and we've kept Steve Buchanan awfully busy this evening. MLB hot or not, these players had big nights last night, but can they do it again tonight? And before we get to hot or not, I want to ask you both about Fernando Tatis likely to miss the rest of the season due to injury. Fantasy impact, Steve?
Well, first and foremost, you can take that National League Rookie of the Year award and gift wrap it to Peter Alonso and give him that. There's one thing. The other thing is, too, is that I think this actually makes the Padres a more attractive team to target against with left-handed pitching. They've been actually one of the better teams against lefties, but he was one of their best hitters. They also lost Franmil Reyes, who's also good against lefties. So slowly but surely, this team is starting to become more vulnerable against left-handed pitching. So I think that's one of the biggest impacts going down the stretch.
Greg, it's a back injury. Impact on not just, of course, the impact on the Padres lineup now going forward, close to the season.
It's going to be pretty bad, especially against right-handed pitching. Steve brought up they were good against left-handed pitching. That's probably not going to be as much the case anymore. But then the other issue, too, is against right-handed pitching, they haven't been a very good offense this year. Now going forward, that's going to be a team we want to roster right-handed pitchers against. In terms of the Rookie of the Year award, I thought it was probably going to go to Alonso anyway, just because the home run numbers are so ridiculous for him. But now for sure it's going to be Alonso as the Rookie of the Year.
Okay, so now we can move on to hot or not. These players had big nights last night. The question is, can they do it again tonight? And one of those guys is Carlos Santana. He led all players in fantasy points last night with 41. Can he keep up the strong play tonight against Masahiro Tanaka? $4,900, Greg.
So I don't really think this is a good spot for Santana, especially given the price. He's a switch hitter, but he's a little bit better hitting against left-handed pitching than he is against right-handed pitching. And the other thing to consider against any hitter going up against the Yankees is that the bullpen's really good, and that's going to take up a big part of the at-bats that Santana's going to see. He's one of the most expensive first basemen on the slate, so I don't really want to chase the points. I think he's a little too expensive. I'd rather go elsewhere.
Steve?
That's actually exactly why I want to take Santana here. I don't think the Indians are going to be looked at as a viable stacking option at all. But, Tanaka struggles with the home run ball, and it's been a little bit better at home than he has on the road here. But this is a very, very powerful Indians club, and Santana has been one of those guys. He's been absolutely crushing in the second half 6 doubles, 10 home runs through 32 games so far. Tanaka gets in a little bit of trouble. There's just no relief going against that lineup. So I actually do kind of like Tanaka. I like Santana on the spot.
Awesome moment last night in Philly. Bryce Harper hit a walk-off grand slam. Philly's got the win. One of the coolest moments of his career. That's what Harper said. Do you think he can stay hot when he faces Chris Paddock and the Padres? Harper 4,500, Steve.
I'm not really targeting Harper in this spot. I mean, it's not the best matchup. I mean, look, Paddock does struggle with home runs. He's allowed 10 of his 18 home runs, 2 left-handed bats here, but 4,500 for Harper seems just like a little bit too much. I mean, he is points over his last 10 games, but there's a lot of pitching options I'd rather pay up for in this spot. So Harper might have a good game here. I don't think he's worth paying up for here, but not the best matchup here, so I'm going to say not.
Greg, into Harper?
Now, I'm so tired of talking about Bryce Harper. I feel like we talk about him, like, I don't know, once, twice a week. Every show, anything I do, it's is Bryce Harper going to have a big game? I feel like I've talked about him 50 times this year. He scored over DK fantasy points maybe one of those times at most. He's fine. He's an okay hitter. He's like the 50th or so best hitter in baseball. And because of how much he's paid and the name value and because he was good once like 5 seasons ago, there's still this idea that he's some elite hitter. He's fine. He's in a really tough matchup against Chris Paddock. There's a lot of offenses in really good spots that I'd much prefer to Bryce Harper and the Phillies offense tonight.
Jeez, we ought to call you a wambulance. My God. Let's go to Carlos Correa. He ended a 3-game slump last night. 28-point performance on DraftKings. Will he be hot or not at 4,400 against the A's? Greg?
Yeah, so Carlos Correa, I think he's going to have a really good finish to the season. Kind of been the case for him his entire career. Whenever he's healthy, he's a really good player. He's arguably the best offensive shortstop in baseball. The issue is that he's not healthy all that often. If you look at his home run numbers, he might only play like 95 games this year and still hit a career high in homers. He's been a really high upside bat. And the other thing also is that he's in the middle of a ridiculously loaded offense now that Yordan Alvarez is up, Michael Brantley's in the lineup. So that Astros lineup is going to be really good to close out the season. The other thing, too, Tanner Roark pitching for the A's tonight has really struggled since the All-Star break, ERA of almost 6.
Yeah, Steve, off that point by Greg, you like the matchup here for Correa?
The one thing about Roark, though, is that he's actually pretty tough against righties. Only got a 3.50 xFIP against him, and they're playing in Oakland, which isn't exactly the best hitter's park in the league here. So I'm actually going to go with not on Correa here. I don't mind this matchup overall for the Astros, but again, if we're talking about, someone to pay up for here, Correa doesn't really jump out at me here. I think Tanner Roark deserves a little bit more respect than he's getting. He's not my favorite pitcher by any means, but he has been pretty tough against righties.
Yeah, one thing I'll just throw in before we go on about Roark is he was pretty good against righties, but that was in the National League. I kind of wonder now that he struggled with the A's pitching in the American League against better competition. I'm starting to think that could be an issue for him going forward because he was kind of a marginal pitcher when he was in the NL.
For sure.
All right, moving on. Pretty quiet season for Evan Longoria overall, but having a nice August. 26-point game last night. Can he get hot again when the Giants face the D-backs, or not worth spending $4K on him, Steve?
I don't even know the last time we've talked about,
Yeah, I thought the same thing. I did too.
We don't talk about Evan Longoria. I mean, I just have no interest here.
Okay.
I mean, he's been better on the road than he has been at home, but, we're still on the fence here on if Chase Field is still a better pitcher's park or hitter's park here. The thing with Mike Leake is that, he doesn't strike out a lot of guys. He gives a lot of contact. So the opportunity for Longoria is there. I'm going to say mild here because I have no interest here. I don't think we can really tab Longoria as a hot or not candidate. So I'll say he's mild. How's that one?
Greg, you remember Evan Longoria?
Yeah, I remember him. I feel pretty good about saying not with Evan Longoria. So here's the thing. He is having a pretty good month of August, but if you look at the numbers, he's a 400 BABIP. That's going to come down. And he's walked 0 times the entire month. So he's just getting extremely lucky. He's putting balls in play that just happen to be finding holes. Not a lot of upside here, and I think he's going to come crashing down. He's just a league average player at this point.
All right, real quick before we wrap up. Pete Alonso, 5-hit game last night. Does he keep it going? Mike Montgomery is his opposition. Steve, first.
Hey, Peter Alonso's facing a lefty. Yes, hot.
All right, and Greg?
Yeah, not only is he facing a lefty, he's facing a not very good lefty. Montgomery had by far the best outing of the season last time out. And before that, I don't think he'd score more than like 8 DK fantasy points in any start. He's going to get blown up again. Last start was a total fluke for him.
Yeah, and plus he found out Tatis likely might miss the season, so maybe that kind of just gives him the green light to take home this Rookie of the Year thing. All right, before we let you go, slate-approved pick, 15-game slate. We'll go to Steve first, then Greg.
Yeah, Charlie Morton, eat the chalk here. He's in an elite matchup tonight.
All right, Mr. Ehrenberg, who is so upset about talking about Bryce Harper.
So I actually had Morton here too, but I'm going to go a little off the board here. we need some cheaper starting pitchers to roster just because there's so many good expensive offenses tonight. So I'm going to say John Gray. We talked about him at the top. He's pretty cheap. He's pitched well at home. The Marlins offense is terrible. I don't care what their implied team total is. There isn't an idea that all of a sudden they're playing at Coors Field. They should score twice as many runs as they normally score.
All right, good stuff, everybody. Thank you so much. Thanks to everybody in Chicago. Stay tuned to the DraftKings social platforms for all of that coverage from Wrigley. For everybody, I'm Brendan, and have a great weekend.